Hey everyone, and welcome to App Stories. I am Logan Fields, the founder and creative director of the App Guys, and today we have app millionaire George Bryant, who brought to market one of the top health apps of all time. George, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm super excited. I will say this is like a novelty. Nobody ever interviews me just about the app, and I'm really excited to talk about this.
I love it, man. Yeah, so we're going to get into some of the interesting details, like how much this costs, what were some of the hiccups, what were some of the surprises, and I want to talk about maybe some of your recommendations for
Yeah.
what other app owners should look at. Let me preface with this, right? The reason we put out these App Stories episodes is I want high income earners who already, especially those who already have businesses, to understand that software is one of the absolute best things to add a new income stream. It cash flows easy, it's worth a lot. And so that's kind of the direction we're going. That's who we're talking to. Why don't you go ahead and just tell us about the app, what it did, who it was for, all that good stuff.
Yeah, man. Awesome question. Yeah. So the app we made was called Caveman Feast. And so for a little bit of context, after I got out of the Marine Corps after 12 years, I became a food blogger, and I was a paleo food blogger. I used it to cure my own bulimia, lose 100 pounds, and like really take charge of my health.
Yeah.
And I built this business. I had this blog, this online following, and I had launched an ebook prior, which did really, really well. And I had a really good customer base and wasn't massive, just for the record, probably around 7,000 people on my email list. And I was getting some decent website traffic with recipes and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there was this resounding theme of everyone's like, God, I wish this was easier. Like, I wish I could have this at the grocery store. I wish I knew what recipes to make. And like, we were kind of in that age, because this was 2015, 2016, we were in that age where like printing recipes off wasn't the thing anymore. Like the iPhone and all these different pieces, people were starting to get really, really roped into convenience and having things at their fingertips greater than they'd ever had before. And it was also the year that Apple released the Apple Health kind of integration, and Apple Health was added to the watches and to the phones and things like that. And so we were basically just running and gunning a normal business. We were making digital products. We were, doing affiliate revenue with like food brands and things like that. And I was basically getting overwhelmed with the amount of people saying like, we need you to launch an app. We need you to launch an app. And we're like, all right, fine. And so I worked with a business partner of mine at the time, and we looked at everything. And we're like, okay, we can do this. But neither of us really wanted to learn how to code. We didn't really want to do any of this. We looked at the web app route. We looked at all that stuff. But 5 years ago, web apps weren't really even a thing.
Right.
And, so we were like, okay, we kind of have to do a standalone app. And we started diving into it. We found a developer who was willing to go in and partner with us as an equal equity partner and not as like a massive amount of investment. And so the deal was, he would get 33% of the app. He would maintain it, all the updates, all the patches, all the different pieces, and then would be paid. And then we would front the cost of creating the app. And so what we did is we basically, and I just want to preface this too, the recipes that were in the app were the same exact recipes that were on the website, which were the same exact recipes that were in the ebook. And I think that's a very important distinction to remember. And it's almost similar to content marketing these days, where the content is always going to be the same. The medium in which it's delivered is based on the person, their personality, and their habits. And so we had a lot of people that would read our website and look at our recipes, but then not want to have to download it, save it, pin it, or print it. And so they just wanted to open their phone and search it and then have it there. And so most of our customer base was interested in buying all of them. So they had the ebook on their computer and they printed out in their kitchen. And then they had my physical cookbook in their kitchen. And they had the recipes and the emails and the social. And then they had their app when they went out into the world to restaurants and things like that. And so we partnered with the app developer. I think all in all, from beginning to end, because all the content existed already, it took us about 4.5 months from like, let's do this, and like basically, let's do this. Took us about 2 weeks to wireframe it all, like really, really just wireframing it, making sure the user experience was good, that we were hitting the ticks. We did a whole lot of customer telepathy, and customer telepathy, the term my buddy Travis and I use, but basically I got on the phone with almost 500 customers. And so I was literally getting on 10, 15, 20 calls a day with anybody who was a fan of mine on social media, or I had their email or was in my Facebook group. I'm like, oh my God, if I launched an app, like, what would you want? Like, what would you need it to do? What would you want it to accomplish? Like anything you want to track, like what, and that's where we gathered all the feedback and all the things that people wanted. And then we wireframed the whole thing out. Once the wireframe was good, it was a pretty quick, like one and done, like we all agreed on it because the branding was pretty congruent and we were all there and we had so much feedback from customers. It was like we were given the cheat code to Nintendo. And so we just started building it. And Andreas is who built it. And I think he finished it about 3 months later, like full on fledged. It's been fully tested, everything there. And then we had an app. And so that's kind of like what we thought about. Now the app itself, and it's still out in the App Store, by the way, it's called Caveman Feast. It's nuts to me that it still has the reviews that it has and it still does what it does. I haven't promoted that app in almost 4 years and I still get Apple checks like twice a year. And I was like, where did this come from? What was this? And I don't even own that company anymore. But the app I kept because it was mine. I gave away the company and the audience, but the app I kept. And I was like, people are still finding this thing. They're still like lurking and searching and having it. And so that's basically how we got to the app. Now the app itself was recipes, obviously in an easier medium or modality for people to consume. And then what we did is we took all the best things that people wanted. They wanted to be able to take the recipe, hit plus, and add it to a shopping list. And they wanted to change quantities so they could make for one person or two people or four people. Mm-hmm. We put recipe, nutrition information for every recipe so they could hit a button and add it to their Apple Health. And we were the first health app that integrated recipes and macros with the Apple Health app, like on the phones.
Yeah.
And so, but really from like a functionality perspective, all it was recipes and you being able to save them, make a shopping list out of them, change the amount that you made to change the serving size or the instructions or the ingredient quantities, which would just update your shopping list. And then when you just hit, oh, I'm going to eat this, you hit one button and it just added the macronutrients to your app and you just changed your serving size. And so the whole functionality of the app was basically just that. And so that's kind of how the app came to be and like what it was.
Now, did you have to update? When's the last time you had to update the app?
So we still update the app.
Yeah.
So we got shot in the foot pretty bad because we launched our app when app reviews were based on the whole app itself, not the version of the app.
Right. Yeah.
And so when we launched the app, we got almost 2,000 5-star reviews in the first 30 days. We hit the highest I ever hit in iTunes was number 3. And that's in all of iTunes. So there were 3.1 million apps at the time and we hit number 3. And
so like when you were number 3, how much money was the app bringing in?
I'd have to go back. Here's what I know. We were getting tens of thousands of downloads a week. And there were days that it was like that. And what we did is we changed the pricing structure. When we launched free. And then we went to 99 cents for like our audience. And then after we had like basically run the gamut, I wanted to thank everybody for like being in our world and, you know, utilizing it and having it. So we did 99 cents, I think for about 4 months. And then once like the rush kind of dropped, we went to $2.99, which was our initial plan.
Cool.
And we had the momentum, we had the reviews, we had everything. The problem was, and you understand this, we didn't at the time, we were so stoked because we had all those reviews and we were driving and like we released an update and we released an update. And then one day we released an update and all the reviews went away.
Yeah.
And we died, like legitimately died. And I mean, we went from a couple thousand downloads a week at that point to like none, like 10, 15, 20. And I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And when they added that, their algorithm was kind of all tweaking. And so what things used to show up as number 1 were now gone because it was the latest version reviews that were popping to the top. And so we learned some pretty valuable lessons in all of that stuff. And, but the app itself, was a big success. And based on our audience and what it was, marketing is obviously my sweet spot, which we can talk about on another show. But it was where the rubber met the road is that I put my spin and my customer journeys and all the stuff I know about marketing into the app, and the behavior around the app and the psychology of human behavior and using the app, and like taking all that feedback. And so the app pretty much managed itself once it launched. Like once people
Yeah.
caught wind of it, like it was kind of going like nuts. And
Yeah.
so all the updates that we do now, Andreas still updates it. He just basically does the
Cool.
patches for the new iOS versions and things like that.
Sure.
We haven't added anything to the app in probably 3 years because I'm not a food blogger anymore. And so, it just kind of lives there and people still use it. I still get messages about it. But yeah, I will say this, the app itself, because I know we were going to talk about this anyways, the Apple app itself cost right around like 40, if I remember, is like $40,000 to $42,000, like just in full everything. And that was the wireframing, the development, the everything.
And that was with someone partnering with you.
That was with him partnering with us, right? And the thing is he offered to do it a different way, but I felt that I had no control over what was going to happen with that app once it was done. And I am one of those above brow guys. Like we have a rule in all of my companies that the goal is that every one of our employees starts at a 6-figure salary. It doesn't matter where you are, where you come from. And so I was like, hey man, like I would feel better if we just pay you and your team for the time. And then you still get partnership in this. And I was like, cause you're taking a chance on us. And so that's what we decided to do. And we made that money back at 99 cents in 8 hours.
That's so amazing. Yeah.
And so, and it was kind of like I look at it now and I'm like, I totally understand why it worked and I could do it again over and over and over and over again. At the time though, I didn't realize how good I was with customer journeys and behavior and psychology, right? This was 6 years ago.
Cool.
And so now obviously I'm really good at it and I know. And so it wasn't luck. It was the intersection of a whole lot of pieces that came together. And I think the most important distinction of all of this is that we didn't just launch an app. Like it wasn't like, oh, I have this idea. And that's a mistake I see entrepreneurs make all the time. And also people that have asked me about apps, they come to me, hey, I want to launch this app. I want to launch this app. I want to launch this app. I'm like, for who? And they look me dead in the eyes and like, for my customers. I said, have you talked to any of them? And they're like, no. I'm like, then don't lie to yourself. You're launching it for you. And I was like, but also don't get upset when it doesn't go.
Yep.
And, marketing, business, product creation, and apps are no different. And
yes.
And I think it's such an important distinction, and it's one of those things. And I love people that make software and make apps and do these things. And I'm an app addict. I have like 9 pages and they're in folders. Like there's probably like 700 apps on my phone. And I'm like, I have FOMO if I delete one of them, right? I'm like, but what if I need it that one day?
Right.
But the most important thing is that all those ones I keep because they resonate with me and they speak my language. Yeah. And there's apps that I've had that I've deleted where I'm like, God, I feel like the person who made this app made it for themselves. And that like little unique ability. And I was like, oh, it would be so great if it had this and this and this. And so I think it's a really important distinction. If I had to give a word of advice to anybody doing all of this, I teach a 9-step model when I help companies ethically scale, but I think the most important step is that the first 8 steps are all about content and customers and empathy and avatars and that. The 9th step is what I call earned automation. And I say you have to earn the right to automate or else you automate yourself out of business. And I take that same theory and approach when it comes to products. And I watch people spend 3 months, 6 months, 12 months deving products, trying to launch products. And then the biggest problem is there's no accurate feedback loop. They're doing it for themselves.
Right.
And then 11 months later, they're like, I'm about to go out of business. I'm $7 million in the hole. I just quit. And I posted on social. I said, I just don't know what to do. And somebody commented and said, oh, if you called it this and added this, I would have bought it. And they make that change. And then they're a $10 million company. Right. And so I think it's one of the most neglected and underutilized gifts that we have as entrepreneurs and business owners. And listen, not everybody's comfortable getting on calls. Like Logan and I were talking about this before. If Logan and I were on Zoom, we would talk for probably 12 hours with no interruptions and be completely fine with it. And we wouldn't realize what time it was. And I love conversing with you. it doesn't mean that you always have to get on calls. You just have to know
Sure.
where your customers are and your potential customers are, and you have to have a means at communicating with them to where they can be very open and honest and make them a part of the process. And I will tell you, a benefit to that is that when I made 500 people a part of the process, who do you think the first 500 people that downloaded the app for free were before I changed the price? And where
Right.
do you think the first 372 reviews came from? And by the way, of the 500 people, 372 of them left reviews within the first 2 hours.
That's amazing.
And
Yeah.
my biggest fear, not then, now I'm really shocked I didn't get shut down because of the amount of volume of reviews, because
They
it
would have thought
it
you were fake.
looked
Yeah.
very fake
Sure.
because of the amount of volume. And I actually had the same thing with my book launch, my actual physical book launch. I had 730 Amazon 5-star reviews in 2 days. But
Nice.
I had spent 9 months nurturing those people
Yeah.
so that it could happen, right? And so but yeah, so when I think about the app and I think about all of that stuff, the way that I think about anything but apps in general are, you really have two sides. If you're going to launch an app, in my opinion, you're going to launch an app that's kind of like a standalone, like it is the app. You're an app company and that's what you're doing. Or the other side is the app is an enhancement or another pillar or modality for an existing business or brand that you're utilizing for a purpose for your customers or for your brand.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first thing for me is, like, if I was to ever launch one again, and I don't think I will, but you never know. These things get thrown around every day. And I say that famously all the time. And 2 years from now, we're going to be doing another podcast. I'm like, man, you never believe it. I did it again.
Yeah.
Being very intentional about why you're doing it and what you're doing it for,
Mm-hmm.
and then understanding all the aspects of that foundationally so that the blueprint is there. And then all the holes in the bucket have either been plugged or pre-identified that are going to come, so that when it starts happening, you can continue to do it or know that it will work, even if those hiccups are there, right? And so, depending on what frameworks, I know a whole lot of software developers use, something like, sprint models or the agile model, or, things like that when they come to software development and planning. And I think the most underutilized aspect of all of it is including customer feedback and having feedback loops, focus groups, and customer telepathies in the entire process,
Yeah.
not just the feedback when the app is done process. Because I feel like at this point, it's too late.
Yeah.
Because now, like, we spend 8 months deving an app, and I don't know how long it takes to dev an app anymore. You'd have to tell me that. But like, if you're deving an app and you dev an app for even 3 months, and you're like, all right, we got it up, test flights up, test it, and you start getting feedback, you're not going back a week. Some of that feedback, you're going back to the framework, and you're like, crap, like, you start to realize your entire UI is broken. Like,
Sure.
It doesn't do what it's supposed to do. The GUI doesn't match what it was. The behavior patterns aren't what we thought they were.
Right.
And so for me, when I think about business, I'm very, very risk oriented and risk averse at the same time. And I say that because I will throw big numbers and big energy and big momentum, and I mean all the way into everything I do. Because I'm so risk averse, I spent an extra 2 months thinking through every conceivable scenario before it happened. And so I basically guarantee my success.
Yeah. I love that. So, and this is one thing, people are so scared to share their idea because they're worried people are going to steal it.
They are going to steal it. And guess what? They can't steal you.
Yeah, exactly. It's about the business person in the end. Are you a good business person? That's what makes a successful app.
You know what? Totally. And even deeper, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I get really excited about this. And you just said something. People don't buy the best product. They buy the best relationship.
Yeah, I love it.
And like, when you think about brand loyalty, when you think about customer loyalty, think about what exists in the world. Like, Android people are loyal to a fault. And I mean on a whole different level. But even in the existence of that, there are so many flaws with those phones and security vulnerabilities, but they're willing to foresee them because they have a relationship and the social status built into being a part of that culture.
Yeah.
Right. Think about the amount of products and brands that you and I use every single day, the watches we wear, the cars that we drive, the gyms that we go to, and we could walk in a moment's notice and we could point out 50 objections or reasons we shouldn't use that product or brand. but
Sure.
we don't, and we forget they exist because we have a relationship with the person who either introduced it to us or the brand itself.
Yeah.
And we choose based on that.
Yeah. I love it. That's such a big deal. And one of the ways that I recommend people go about this is do like a Facebook group, get people in and say, and let them see your wireframes, let them see your designs, and then that can be your beta test group as well.
And it's the best free marketing that you will ever have in your
Yes,
entire life.
100%.
And when you think about this, so here's what's nuts. So I think about that app, right? And the brand that was around it. I was a guy who'd never cooked before, came out of the Marine Corps, covered in tattoos. It was like, I'm bulimic, talking openly about food on food blogs about being sexually abused and physically abused and witnessing death and like deployments and all these things. And I'm like, oh yeah, and you should cook healthy and love your body and you should self-love. And people are like, who are you? And I was like, well, listen, I'm actually doing this for me, not for you. And in that, though, I found out a whole lot about my customers. And I think what's nuts to me is you're in my Facebook group. You're in the world that we live in now, Logan.
Yeah.
And what's nuts is I have 30, 40 people in that group that were food blog fans from 2010 that don't even own a business and aren't entrepreneurs, that just stay in the group because they're still here.
That's interesting.
And
Yeah.
the thing that's nuts is I had a rule when I launched that company that the only way that I would do it is if I made sure that humans always mattered. And so I made a rule from day one that the second I couldn't respond to every comment or every post, I needed to close the business. 9 years later, 1 million fans, 5 million uniques a month, and on average 1,000 to 2,000 comments a day. And me and my team were still personally responding. My team of 1, by the way, personally responding to every single message and every single comment every single day 9 years later. And
Yeah.
so I didn't become a 22-week New York Times bestseller or hit number 4 in the world or launch the number 1 health app of 2015 and get voted by Apple because my app was better.
Right.
I got it because my relationships were better.
That's awesome.
And I obsessed about them at a level that most people can't fathom.
I love it. Yep. That's awesome. If we could end on kind of a project centric question, what do you think are some ways that an app owner can choose the right developers? Because I'll tell you what, man, we have a lot of people that come to us who lost a lot of money on bad developers.
Yep.
How do people choose the right team?
Oh my God. Like, this is such a good question. And one other thing I want to hit too, because you did ask me right before we started about mistakes, and I want to share one. It's a pretty valuable lesson after I answer this question. So listen, my wife is probably one of the wisest women I've ever met in my life, and she's the reason I'm alive today. And most people would have quit and left me a long time ago, but she saw something in me. But she also said something to me about a week after I met her, and it took me about 10 years to understand it. And she said, when people show you who they are the first time, believe them. And it's something that I've carried through my business and my life every day. And it's one of those things that when I forget it, I'm punished. And when I remember it, I'm rewarded. And it's got nothing to do, and the answer to your question is in this lesson, and I will tie it together. It's got nothing to do with what happens on the other side of that table. And so when you're sitting down with somebody, when you're interviewing app developers, when you're having conversations, if your spidey senses are tingling, believe them and stop the conversation and thank them for their time and move on. You not choosing them is more of a gift to them and you than it is a detriment. And I see entrepreneurs do this all the time. They will make concessions for this one time because they are the best, or their wireframes are the best, or their price was the cheapest. And if you sacrifice your moral compass, your business will suffer.
Yeah.
And so, right away, like, tangible example, Logan and I have never met in person. He shot me a DM, and within an hour I was like, bro, let's get on a call. I can't wait to talk. And typically, normally, like, everyone's like, why are you getting a call with me? Like, thanks for, I'm like, stop telling me you respect my time. Let's talk. I want to talk. Tell me about everything, right?
Yeah.
1 minute of being on a call with you, I'm like, I would be friends with you for the rest of my life. I legitimately would let you have dinner in my house every night, be here with my wife and kids. And so at that moment, I was like, I will give Logan everything that I have without charging him $1, give anything that I can give, ask you any way I can support you, and I'll probably never ask you to pay me. Byproduct of that is you will, but like,
right.
I knew within a moment's notice, and here's the thing, if in that moment I felt something different, I would have been like, hey, Logan, listen, I want to help you, brother. Like, this just, something doesn't feel right. Like, I'd love to do the podcast. I'd love to do it, and we can explore what's hereafter, but I'm very open about it. Because we have to remember too, on the other side of that table, no developer wants to work with a nightmare client. They don't want to work with somebody who doesn't believe in them, that's going to doubt them, that's going to question them. And so if you're looking at people and potential people to work with, and you find yourself hypercritical, asking questions, having negative thoughts, pessimism around it, your responsibility is to walk away, because your body and your brain and your gut and your soul is telling you that it's not a good fit. And no amount of dev, price, best app in the world, best reputation in the world will ever overcome that. And it will always be a sore point and a hole that will be like cancer, and it will eat you and them from the inside out until the entire relationship dissipates.
Yes.
The end.
I dig it.
Now, here's what's funny. I have never once met my app developer. I've never been on a video call with him. And in 6 years, I've only had 2 phone conversations, and they were all 5.5 years ago. And I've never talked to him since, except via email once a quarter.
Yeah.
That first phone call, I was like listening, asking questions. He was like, yeah, that's what I'm on. I'm like, yeah, done. And then a month later, he's like, do you need any updates? I'm like, no, man, you're good. And he's like, hey, I haven't heard from you. Are you good? I'm like, yeah, you're working, right? He's like, yeah. I'm like, no, just let me know when you're done. Like, but when you get to that level, right? Like, that's what those are the better questions that I ask, right? It's like, when you think about anything, developers, the product, the team that you have around it, right? Like, you have to ask yourself, like, does this feel easy? Yeah. And if before it starts, it doesn't feel easy, it's going to get 100 times worse once the ball is rolling. And what you're happening is you're having conversations with people in the before state. You're having conversations with people before the project pressure starts, before the budget comes out, before the time frames, before all the design, all the changes, all the feedback. Yeah. And if you're sensing something, or even criticalness or resistance or defensiveness in the pre-process, if you add money, contracts, and deadlines to it, it's an atomic bomb.
Yeah, that's well said. I love it. That's great. All right. Well, thanks so much for
being. Can I give that mistake, man? Can I give that mistake?
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. I have no problem being like, man, shut up. I got more to say. That's shut up with love, by the way. So we did end up launching the app on Android. And it took us about 6 hours to make the money back on Apple. And I think the Android app dev, because it was separate, we had to rebuild the Android app, was around $53,000.
Yeah.
And it took almost 14 months to recoup. And this was with a very big subset. And I mean, not a small one, like 2,000 people on a waiting list telling us, I want the app. I want the app. You need an Android app. We need an Android app. All the Android people. And this was the thing that I learned. Every Android people will tell you all day they want an app. 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 Right? Awesome. Do the due diligence and make sure that you understand that the things that you're doing for the right reasons and not just based on promises of people. Because of those 2,000 people, less than 300 or 400 of them got the app when we actually released it. And that was for free. And I was like, oh, crap. And then within the first couple of weeks, the Android app was ripped off 5 times.
Yeah.
Because that marketplace is not vetted and done like Apple's. And it's kind of like the wild, wild west. And I know it's gotten better over the years, but it's still like the wild, wild west. And the subset of Android users is the nature of them is they don't download apps in the first place. They're on an open source platform and they tend to make their own and do certain things. And like, it's not a very big app culture, even though they say it is. The app culture they're talking about are the Facebooks, the Instagram.
Yeah.
And so just make sure that when somebody's asking you or you have fans telling you something, that you're listening to what they're telling you, but you're also doing the due diligence to make sure that it's aligned to your business. Because if we hadn't had the success with Apple and then launched that app, potentially could have put us out of business because we just took their word for it. And because we had so much success, I became very naive and blind and almost broke all my own rules to do that app. because
Sure.
of what was there and the promises that were made without doing the same level of due diligence. Now, we brought them in, we showed them the wireframes. We did all the same stuff we did with Apple.
Yep.
But if I look back now, I can see at every single step all the cues that those people weren't going to buy and it wasn't going to be a success. And I'm glad that we made the money back. But I literally have never met somebody with an Android in our app, never got emails from them, never conversations with them. And I'm not saying Android's bad at
I
all.
get it. Yeah.
It's just make sure that, number one, you do your due diligence. Number two, you know where your customers are.
Right.
And once you know that, then you put yourself there and make sure you're very intentional about what you do.
Yeah, I love it. That's really interesting how different that was.
Well, and it's different psychology too, right?
Yeah.
And I don't talk about politics, but when you think about it, when you think about Apple people are very much like, this is easy. They basically sacrifice freedom in exchange for comfort and convenience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't go mark a text message as unread, and it drives me nuts. But it will never drive me nuts enough to switch back to Android or to try Android, right? And like,
Yeah.
I can't do certain things. I would have to jailbreak my phone, and I'm not doing that anymore. And I just accept the convenience, right? And so Apple people tend to be very, very go with the flow. I love this. It enhances it, right? And then on the other side, Android people like the man against the man. Nothing wrong with this. And I'm against the man sometimes too. And it's like, no, I want to be able to do this, and I want to this and this, and I want to be able to edit this and do this and
Sure.
have this. And so even when our app came out, people were like, well, I wish I could do this. I'm like, guys, like, this isn't like a, build it yourself software platform. Like, it's an app. Like, I can't change the design of the app per person, right? And so just understanding the subconscious culture and the differences in the platforms, and then even looking at it pretty agnostically from a 30,000 foot view. And you and I can very distinctly tell the difference from psychographics with customers and their data and the research and the UI and the UX of the platforms.
Sure.
And there are certain apps that don't belong on either platform. And there's certain apps that belong on both. And there's certain apps that the user base on Android would never, ever, ever touch because its design and the app itself is flawed for that behavior and their consumption behaviors. And so it's a really interesting thing to think about and to really explore when you are doing the things that you're doing, to make sure that you've done your due diligence on multitudes of levels to make sure that it fits with the brand, the business, or what the goals are.
Right. Yeah, I dig it. That's a really interesting case study right there.
Oh man, I still talk about it all day. And I want to say this, if I could close with one thing that I want to tell everybody.
Sure.
The best thing that you can remember is that if you ever create a product to be a solution, it won't work. If you create a product that is an enhancement or a tool to use to help hold them accountable or to achieve a level of success, it will always work. And what I mean by that is, if you launch an app that proposes to solve somebody's problem, and they solve their problem, guess who they don't need anymore?
Right. Yeah,
You.
they don't need you.
Guess who they don't talk about anymore? Guess who they don't tell their friends about anymore? And guess who they forget about when you exist anymore? So for me, I never launched a recipe app. I launched an app that had recipes so that you could use them to achieve the goals that we were teaching you in the business. So now that you know your nutrition and your movement and your water, and you have the recipes on the website, I wanted to make this for you so you have easier access to maintain these goals. I never sold recipes. I sold convenience and accountability to help people achieve their goals.
Yeah.
And so now, years later, people are like, I still use the shopping list. It's amazing. They don't even make the recipes. They like use it to write shopping lists in and to add macros and, things like that. But you just want to make sure that you're understanding user behavior and what it's doing. And so when I think about it as a company, if you're building an app only company, that's fine. But you need to understand that there has to be an after state underneath it that you're helping your customers achieve, that the app isn't the responsible reason that they did it, that the app helped them get there, but it was all these other modalities and the app enhanced it and helped them achieve it, which means once they've achieved it, it also helps them maintain and sustain it.
Right. I love it, man. Well, yeah, thanks so much for sharing the details, getting into the finances, the benefits, the problems. Definitely a lot of interesting stuff. And
can I make an offer to everybody? Do you mind if I can plug my Facebook group, right?
yeah, of course.
Okay, cool. So listen, if you're listening to this podcast, if you have any questions about apps or business, here's what I want you to do. My Facebook group is free. Logan is in it. He will tell you about it. It is loaded with like thousands of dollars of free content around marketing and customer journeys and understanding this. Here's what I will tell you. If you want to send me personally a question about your app, I will personally respond and answer it, or your business or your marketing. My only ask is that you show me that you're committed. So join our Facebook group and just watch the 3 free videos that will literally probably change your business and also help me help you. And as soon as those are done, shoot me a personal DM on Facebook with whatever your question is. I prefer video because that's how human relationships work, and I will carve out time. We can jump on a Zoom call, or I'll send you a video response with anything I know, anybody I know, any access to anything I have, any resources I have that will help your app be successful. And I would love to offer that to you guys. And so I absolutely mean that. Logan will tell you, I mean that to pieces. And so it's really funny to me, Logan, I'm going to call this out. Like, I own a part of, one of the biggest business podcasts in the world, and, a couple million downloads a month.
Nice.
I did an episode and gave away my personal email, like not my business one, like my personal one. And I said, if you email me this, I will answer your questions. That episode got downloaded over 2 million times. I only got 41 emails.
That's amazing.
And I was like, man, like, I really don't think people believe me. I'm like, man, they're missing out. I put all 41 of those people in a room for free. I taught them some stuff. I ended up doing some stuff for them. It was awesome. And I was like, man, people really need to take us up on this. And by the way, this is some reverse psychology for all of you that are listening right now, watching this. So the Facebook group is at, it's really easy. The group is called Relationships Beat Algorithms. And if you want an easy way, if you're listening to this, just remember mindofgeorge.com, MINDOFGEORGE, mindofgeorge.com will take you right to the Facebook group.
Awesome. Thanks, man. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching or listening to App Stories. Be sure to download my app, Logan Fields. Just type it in on the App Store or Google Play. More episodes, free business resources, all kinds of great stuff. And if you are interested in app development, send me a message. I will personally talk to you about your app idea. Thanks, everyone. And I'll cut it right there.